Oh, don't sneak up on me like that. Well, since you're here, just sit down. We'll do some Shakespeare studies, perhaps, with Thinking Shakespeare by Barry Edelstein, Chapter 5, The Word Against the Word. So this chapter is about antithesis. Ooh! So let's just dive right on in with a definition of antithesis. Definition: a figure of speech in which sharply contrasting ideas are juxtaposed in a balanced or parallel phrase or grammatical structure, which Barry then goes on to paraphrase as, antithesis is the clash of opposites. So, very clear antithesis exists. So, night, day, winter, summer, cold, hot. These are very clear, and they show up in Shakespeare. For example, to be or not to be. That is the question. Right? To be or not to be. Clear opposites set in clear comparison with one another, and in this way they're clearly antithetical. Delicious. Another example. Now is the winter of our discontent made glorious summer by the son of York. Right, so we have winter and summer, but also, what kind of summer is it? It's a glorious summer. What kind of winter is it? It's a winter of discontent. And in this way, these two ideas are also set antithetically against one another because they are being compared directly, right? So that dictionary definition that I gave you, that's a fine definition for straight opposites, but Shakespeare gets so much more complicated than that. Your antithetical definition is really going to be any two distinct thoughts that are set against one another for dramatic purposes. Another example. The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. It is twice blessed. It blesseth him that gives and him that takes. 'Tis mightiest in the mightiest, it becomes the throned monarch better than his crown. Right? And so we have some very clear antitheses in here. So, for example, we have as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath, right? Heaven and earth. It blesseth him that gives and him that takes. Direct opposites, but it also has indirect opposites, right? The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth, right? So in this way, the opposite of strained is certainly not droppeth. And the opposite is certainly not true, but they are placed in direct comparison to one another and are therefore considered antithetical. And then an extra weird example. 'Tis mightiest and the mightiest. Mightiest is used in two different forms here. One in its adjectival form, the descriptor, and then one in the noun to describe a royal person. And in this way, by using two different definitions of the same word against each other, they are being brought into direct comparison and may therefore be said to be antithetical. Right? Open your mind to what antithesis can be in Shakespeare. Now, what am I supposed to do with all this antithesis, Jeff? My mind has been thoroughly opened. What do I do? Well, what you need to do is you need to take these opposites and bring out the ideas behind them. You must highlight them for the audience. Jeffrey, how do I highlight these ideas for the audience? Well, you might be tempted to put your stresses on these opposites, right? Winter, summer. Now is the winter of our discontent made glorious summer by the son of York. Right? But if you do that, it becomes very shouty. Don't do that. Instead, bring out the ideas behind the words and set them opposite of one another. That is taking a whole phrase and comparing it against a whole phrase. That is very different than modifying syllable structure, right? Now is the winter of our discontent made glorious summer by the son of York. right? You can tell that these are two totally different ideas. I'm reflecting on totally different imagery for these two ideas. And in this way, they become set apart for the audience. Now, why are we setting it apart for the audience? Because it increases audience comprehension. If you don't set these apart as opposites, it doesn't make sense as a figure of speech, and all of a sudden all these words coming out of your mouth are just gibberish. It is the actor's job to make it clear to the audience when ideas are antithetical to one another. What else must we do? Oh, okay, and then another piece of advice that Barry provides in this book is sometimes you're going to find a situation where your antithesis happens, big idea antithesis happens, and then 4 or 5 verse lines transpire between the antithetical sentiment to that first part comes along. So what are you supposed to do? You must imbue that first section with enough energy that it is going to be echoing in your audience's mind until you get down to the second part. And in this way, Barry describes it as spinning plates. You have to put some force behind that plate while you move down the line so that when you come back, when it's time, it's still spinning and you just have to tap it a little and that'll keep it going. Okay, everybody, that was my attempt to do a whole chapter in one video. I did pretty good. Antithesis is going to come up again, so if you didn't quite get it, don't worry. We're going to cover it again in later chapters. If you desire homework, if not, stop the video now. Homework. Buy this book, read chapter 5. He goes into so many different examples, it's impossible not to understand what he means by the time you've read that chapter 2 or 3 times. If you don't want to buy the book, pick up your Shakespeare compendium, grab it, open it to a play, start reading that play out loud, read it out loud, find the antithetical sections, and practice. Simply practice. Keep your mind wide open to the possibility that something that doesn't appear antithetical is antithetical. Look for direct comparisons between two things. That's always a good sign that you're on the right track. And please,